Hello and welcome to a new United podcast series, Men Behind the Stats. If you're new around here, please do drop a sub, be much appreciated, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at United Podcast, the same as the YouTube channel name. So welcome back, thank you for tuning in, and without further ado, let's get into the video. So the opinion for today's video is that Marcus Rashford is a better striker than he is winger. It was sent in by a viewer, so if you're watching this and you want to send in an opinion for a future video, please do get in touch. DM us at United Podcast on Twitter or Instagram. In this video, to decide whether Rashford is better at striker or on the wing, we're going to answer three questions. Firstly, where does he personally play better? Secondly, is he the best winger at Manchester United? And thirdly, if United are going to be challenging for Premier Leagues and other continental silverware as well in the next few years, is Marcus Rashford up there with the best wingers in the world? Can he therefore be the man to fire United to many, many more titles? So first of all, here's a table showing Rashford's raw numbers at left wing and striker. Now, a table isn't particularly useful for visualisation, but what you can see by the highlighting is that Rashford's numbers are better pretty much across the board at left wing than striker. His goals and assists raw numbers are better, his expected goals and assists are better, which suggests he's getting into better positions, and his passing, carries and actions leading to shots and goals are also better. Right, now to help give these numbers some meaning, I've used a radar here showing Rashford's attacking output per 90 minutes both at left wing and striker. Going round the graph, you can see, going around clockwise, firstly the touches and carries are vastly better at left wing, which suggests he's getting much more involved in the game. Going further round, there's more key passes into the penalty area, and shot and goal creating actions as we saw on the previous slide, which showed that he's actually getting more involved in build-up play and creating more chances. Looking at his assists and expected assists, these are also improved playing on the left wing, and also finally his goal stats. Now the reason I've used the non-penalty version is because not everyone is the penalty taker for their club, and so later when we come to comparing Rashford with other players, it's easier to use non-penalty stats to make it fair. So as you can see, the overall shape of the radar at left wing is much larger, it covers a much bigger area than at striker, and therefore United are clearly getting a better attacking output out of Marcus Rashford playing on the left wing compared with striker. Now that we've answered whether Rashford's better at left wing or striker individually, it's important to have a look at the team expected goals versus Rashford's position. So as you can see from the bar chart, the team expected goals are much better per 90 minutes with Rashford playing at left wing than they are at striker. So this shows that as well as Rashford playing better, the team also plays better. However, with this chart, it's important to note that he didn't play as many games at striker during the 1920 season, and that the quality of opposition wasn't accounted for in these stats. It's just the raw numbers. So although you can take the trend and it looks promising, that's just something to be aware of with that. Having answered now whether Rashford's better on the wing or at striker, we've concluded he's better at left wing. So to decide whether he's the right player to be playing there for United now, we're going to have a look at the other players who could possibly play in the left wing role. The first of those is Daniel James. So looking at his radar and remembering that it's important to look at the differences between the two colours rather than the absolute values, we can see that Dan James is a lot better on the right wing. In terms of pretty much every stat, once again, he's conclusively better on the right hand side. The reason that I haven't used non-penalty stats for goals and assists here is because he doesn't take penalties, so his stats without penalties are exactly the same as they are with penalties. So in effect, it makes no difference. The final thing to note here is that Dan James's raw numbers are far inferior to Rashford's. Now, I've used slightly different metrics on this chart because, well, I've left out some of the ones I used for Rashford because they're not particularly useful for Dan James. But overall, his raw numbers are worse than Rashford, and therefore Dan James shouldn't be a threat to Marcus Rashford in the left wing berth for Manchester United. The next player to look at, who could possibly play on the left wing, is Antony Marcial. So looking at Antony Marcial's attacking output radar, just like we did for Marcus Rashford and Dan James, you can see that actually he's pretty even between playing at striker and left wing. So it doesn't really matter where he's played as he produces similar attacking output in both positions. With this chart, since he's played pretty much predominantly at striker during the 1920 season, I've used the 18-19 season stats for his left wing version because although that wasn't under Solskjaer, that is the last time he's had a consistent run of games on the left wing. Now, For a striker, it's very important that they're efficient and clinical in front of goal. So comparing a useful metric for this, which is the goals minus the expected goals, Martial comes out with a score of 2.8, whereas Marcus Rashford comes out with 0.4. So clearly Martial is more effective and more efficient in front of goal, and therefore better suited to playing at striker than he is on the left wing. The reason we've used goals minus expected goals is to show how clinical the finisher is, as I mentioned. And the reason it shows this is because the expected goals is the average return that you'd expect a player to get from being in those positions. So if a player is able to consistently exceed this with his actual goal scoring total, it suggests that they're a better finisher than average. So the higher the difference between the goals and expected goals, the better the finisher in front of goal. So as a result, we've shown Martial's best suited to playing striker, Dan James is best suited to playing on the right, and Marcus Rashford is best suited to playing on the left wing. So having established him as Manchester United's best left winger, we should now stack him up with other wingers in the Premier League to see how he compares, and whether he can be the man to guide United to more titles and silverware in future. So, coming onto this graph, we've now got, as I said just before, we've got goals minus expected goals on the bottom, and that shows how clinical the forward is in front of goal. And going up the graph, we've got the expected goals and assists per 90 minutes, which is essentially how much they contribute to their team's attacking play per 90 minutes. The reason for using expected goals and assists rather than their overall actual values is because it negates the value of having a better or worse finisher playing up top for your team. So for example, if a winger was consistently beating his man and getting in good crosses to the penalty spot, but the striker was continually missing the tap-ins, then the expected assist value wouldn't be impacted, but the assist value would clearly be quite a lot lower than you'd expect. So using expected values takes out and negates that issue. So the first things that are pretty obvious from this chart are that firstly, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a fantastic finisher. He's consistently far exceeding his expected goals with his actual goal tally, showing that he's really, really good at getting chances from what isn't really even a half chance sometimes. If you look at the other players, there's a big cluster around the top of Salah, Sterling, Mane and Mahrez. Obviously those four all play for Manchester City or Liverpool. So the reason they're so high up on that graph vertically is because City and Liverpool often score more goals, so you would expect that they have a higher goals and assists per 90. With the same logic that we used for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, looking at Lucas Moura for Tottenham and Nicolas Pepe on the left-hand side of the graph, they've got a negative goals minus expected goals, meaning that they're often worse at finishing than the positions they get themselves into you would expect. Now, the point of this video is Marcus Rashford. And what you can see from Marcus Rashford's place on that graph is that he's currently got a pretty good balance between goal contribution and efficiency in front of goal. However, he's clearly not as far right or as far up as you'd want him to be. So in terms of getting further right, how can he extract more goals from possibly the same number of expected goals? And the first way he can do this is by, in fact, reducing the number of expected goals by taking fewer shots outside the box. Because although he has got a good long shot and great shot power, many of these shots don't end up in the back of the net, and the rebounds aren't being snapped up by the Manchester United strikers either. Now, on the rebounds point, you've got to look at the other forwards, but in terms of the actual return from those shots outside the box, there's often not a good return from them. So I think to improve Rashford and take him further to the right, if he takes fewer shots from outside the box, he'll show up on the charts as a much more clinical finisher, and also United will have more attacks that aren't killed by a shot that ends up being saved easily by the keeper or going into row Z. So it will improve both Manchester United and Marcus Rashford's individual stats if he starts taking fewer long shots from outside the box, being more, more disciplined and more decisive about when he thinks he's actually able to score and when he's just taking a shot for the sake of it. As I said when I talked about the City and Liverpool wingers, they're higher up the graph because their team's expected to score more goals. It's important to remember that Rashford would probably be higher up the graph if you only use the second half of the season, since United have improved quite a lot since the tough times in October and November. So, as both Manchester United improve and Marcus Rashford adapts his game to take fewer long shots, he'll be there much closer to the likes of Mane, Mahrez, Salah, Sterling, and he may even be a little bit closer to Aubameyang in terms of how clinical he is as a finisher. So, as a comparison, what this graph shows overall is that Marcus Rashford really is in the mix with the best wingers in the Premier League. He's in the upper echelons of wingers in the world, and as he improves and Manchester United improve, he is clearly good enough to be the talisman for Manchester United, carrying them to future titles, both in England and abroad. So, coming on to the summary to finish the video, first of all, Rashford is much better at left wing than he is at striker. We've also shown that Dan James is better on the right wing, and Martial is better suited to being a striker because he's consistently able to extract more goals than his expected goal tally would suggest, showing that he's a very clinical player. So in conclusion, Rashford is Manchester United's best option on the left wing, and as he improves and the team improves, he could be one of the best wingers in the Premier League, if not the world. The one thing he's got to improve on his game is shooting less from outside the box. So thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do smash the like button, it means a lot to us, and please do drop a sub, and please try and share the channel to help us grow. That's all for now, see you next time.